Today's lesson is on solving addition and subtraction equations. This is in Glenco chapter 7, lessons 2 and 3. We'll first start with the definition of inverse operations. These are operations that undo each other. And they work because of two properties of equality. The first is the subtraction property of equality. If you subtract the same value from each side of an equation, then the two sides will remain equal. So if A equals B, then if we take A minus C, that would be the same as B minus C. This property is also true with addition. In the addition property of equality, if you add the same value to each side of the equation, the two sides will remain equal. So if A equals B, then A plus C will equal B plus C. So as long as I'm adding or subtracting the same thing to both sides, my equation remains balanced. In order to solve equations, we have to work to get the variable alone on one side of the equation. And the most important thing to remember when solving equations is what you do to one side of the equation, you must do to the other side as well. If you do not, then your equation will not be balanced and therefore will not be true. In our first example, we're going to solve equations by subtracting. So we're going to solve h plus 9 equals 14. So I know a lot of you can do this mentally based on what we did in the previous lesson, but the problems will get harder, so let's see how to solve that step by step. So the objective is to get h alone by itself on one side of the equation, so then I'll know its value. So I want to get rid of this plus 9. In order to get rid of the plus 9, I'm going to subtract 9 because 9 minus 9 is 0. So if I do it to one side of the equation, I must do it to the other side. So 14 minus 9 is 5. So h equals 5. So 5 is my answer to the problem. And remember, the cool thing about equations is we can always check our answer and see if we did it correctly. So what I'll do is I'll take this 5 and I plug it back into the original problem of h plus 9. So 5 is h. So 5 plus 9, and that needs to equal 14. So then I add 9 plus 5. I see that I get 14. It checks, and I know that I got my answer correct. Go ahead and take a second and try this out. Pause the video and then restart it when everyone's ready. The first step is to get W by itself on one side of the equation. So I am adding 4 3/10. So in order to get rid of it, I need to subtract 4 3/10. So we'll subtract 4 3/10 from this side. And what I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. So I will also subtract 4 3/10 from this problem. Now at this point, you may use your calculator. So 9 1/10 minus 4 3/10. And so I get 4 8/10. So this is canceled out. W's by itself. W equals 4 8/10. Now I can check my answer by plugging it in back here. So 4 8/10 plus 4 3/10 does equal 9 1/10. My answer checks. We'll try this next one. I need x to be all by itself. So I have a plus 5. I want to get rid of it. So I'll subtract 5. What I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. So then I'll subtract 6 minus 5. I get 1. This all canceled out for me, so x should equal 1. Let's check that. Plug your 1 in. 1 plus 5 needs to equal 6, and it does. My answer checks. We can also solve equations by adding. So when I have a subtraction equation, I'll use addition to undo that operation. So I have the letter P minus 22 3/10, and that needs to equal 5 8/100. So I will add 22 3/10 to this side. What I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. So now I'm going to take my calculator, and I'm going to do 5 8/100 plus 22 3/10, or you could say 30/100, and that would equal 27 38/100. So then I can double check my answer. I'm going to plug in 27 38/100 right here, and we're going to subtract 22 3/10, and I do get 5 8/100. My answer checks. Go ahead and try it out and pause the video again while you get your answer, and then restart when you're ready to check. On this equation, I want to get rid of the minus 7, so the opposite or inverse will be to add 7. And what I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. So 4 plus 7, and it'll cancel this out for me. X is by itself. So 4 plus 7 will give me 11. Now I can check my answer. Plug in 11 here. 11 minus 7 needs to equal 4, and it does. My answer checks. On this next problem, I have 9 equals a minus 5. So first of all, I want to undo this minus 5. So I will add 5, and what I do to one side, I must do to the other. So this will cancel, leave a by itself. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So 14 is a, so now I can check, plug in 14. 14 minus 5 needs to equal 9, and it does. My answer checks. Here's an example of some real-world problem solving. Today, Anna discovered that she is 4 inches taller than she was last year at this time. Anna's height today is 51 inches. Let's set up an equation to determine Anna's height last year at this time. All right, so today her height is 51, and that height is 4 inches taller. There's where our plus comes from. Than last year's height. So last year's height plus the 4 extra inches gives her her height now. So now in order to find what she was last year, I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides so that I can get h by itself. These will cancel out. And then all I'm left to do is 51 minus 4. So last year she was 47 inches tall. I can check this equation. I can plug in the 47 plus 4, and it does check out. I get 51. Alright, and now try it out on your own. Pause the video so you can try to come up with your equation and restart when you're ready. So these rollerblades cost $70.25 less than the bicycle. So first I need to think of which one was more. So if the rollerblades cost less and the bicycle costs more, it tells us how much the rollerblades actually cost, but we want to know what the bicycle cost was. So we're going to write and solve a subtraction equation. So I'm going to use B for the cost of the bicycle. And the rollerblades were less than the bicycle. So the cost of the bike minus the $70.25 will give me the cost of those rollerblades. So by solving this equation, I'll know how much that bicycle cost. So since we have minus 70.25, what I want to do is add the 70.25 to both sides. That's my inverse operation. It will cancel everything out here and leave the cost of the bicycle all by itself. So you can use your calculator. $43.50 plus $70.25 will give me a cost of $113.75 for that bicycle. I can plug this in and use $113.75, subtract my $70.25, and I do get the $43.50. It does check.